So I'll start by saying the inspiration for this job came from Blondie Hack's video. These are a more simplified version of what she built. As you can see my stock there, this was part of an auction I acquired in a 2 inch by 2 inch stock. Hindsight, I don't think I'll ever do what I did here on another job. It took forever to machine that great big chunk down. Here, when I set this up, I was thinking, I'm glad no one actually sees this, but it's actually not the worst of ideas. The back is supported, so it will not pull that bar down when it's being cut. My idea here is to take off all the material I need from this bar and then come back and cut it up into smaller pieces as I go. When I was doing most of the machining on this, I machined it in the biggest pieces possible, doing all the cuts for all the pieces and then cutting them smaller afterwards. So, next thing like these two are cut up, and it's just a matter of cleaning them up a little bit with a file here to take any edges off them. After that, it got a little inventive here on how to actually hold these things. But first I got them all squared up in the milling machine, and then it was back to the bandsaw, and my vise on the bandsaw doesn't quite go out as far as I'd like it to go out. So I actually did need to kind of build a clamping system on my bandsaw for that. What I'm cutting with here, it is an indexed end mill. And I have to say, like, I do have, some high speed steel end mills and carbon end mills. And I really, really like this one. Um, it does a wonderful job on this 4041 steel. At least I think it's 4041 steel, and it leaves a really nice finish as well. And of course, being indexable, those ends, if you do something stupid, you can just put some new inserts in there, and you're off and running, and you don't have to throw the end mill away. So as I said, it gets a little bit sketchy here. Um, Extending that jaw out enough, and I didn't want to cut pieces off for it, so I just went that way. Now, this little thing I picked up quite a while ago, and it's been very useful in a few projects I've done for getting stuff on the angle. Unfortunately, with this project, when the metal went in there, it pushed that tooling back far enough that it actually fall within the vise. Now, there is an easy fix to that. I can put a parallel underneath that and keep it from falling in there. But at the same time, I also have assortment of different cut angles that I can use too to get the proper angle on there. And I went with 20 degrees on this. So once I got it set up for the 20 degrees, I started to cut the angle for the nose on these things. And like I said, they're all being cut at the same time here. And after they're getting cut, then I'll start slicing this up into smaller pieces of material. And on this, you can actually see by the lip there how much of that material is going to be taken off of this. And most of the work on this project was actually on the milling machine, getting these pieces of material down. These are for the 3-inch ones, and I'm going to get 3 off of each one of them, 3 uppers, 3 lowers. And there was a heck of a lot of material that had to come off of these, but I think in the future, I'm going to do projects like this. I'll buy material that's a lot smaller, instead of trying to mill such a big piece of material down to what I need. And there's one of those blocks I was talking about. You can see it on the corner on the block. It does say 20 degrees on it. And that's going to hold that piece right there where it actually needs cut, or where I decided it needed cutting on the 20 degrees. After they're both cut, like I say, there was a substantial amount of material that was coming off of there. But this end mill did a wonderful job of getting through that material super fast. And at this point, I got it down. So I got 3 3-inch ones right there, 3 tops, 3 bottoms, and 2 5-inch ones there, again, tops and bottoms. And the next thing I needed to do was actually slice these things, and I didn't really want to do that, so I kind of put those aside, and I started making the screws for all of these things. And for the 5-inch ones, I started with a fine screw, and after the first one, and how long it actually took me to thread that thing, the next one became a coarse screw set in there. With this, I did go down first and use a die that was designed for cutting. Then after using the cutting die, I went back in and put a chasing die on to finish it off because I have my cutting dies open up a fair bit. You know, because I've had a problem in the past with actually warping metal when I've been cutting them. Then, of course, this thing's gone back and just put a little bit of knurling on the end of it there, and then come back in and chamfer the top off and cut them off. So this piece of metal I've had for months sitting on the table, and the design for it was always be a plate for the saw I got, and I never ever got around to doing it because until now I never really needed it. But all you really need to do there is drill two holes, countersink the two holes for the screws, and then cut a slot in the top there for the saw blade to fit in. Um, had a few ideas on how to cut that slot, but at the end of the day, I just took a grinder with a fine wheel on it and cut it. Uh, so my next idea here was to use one of these pieces and bolt it down, or keep it secured and have it as a fence. That didn't work out all that good. It didn't take too long at all to figure out that that wasn't working, and the best way to feed this stuff through the saw was actually just by freehanding it, and when it got close to the end, using some push sticks, so you're not actually got your hands anywhere near the metal when it's finally going through the saw. So, like I said, this was the first idea here, and it didn't take long before I gave up. So on these, like you see on the two 5-inch ones, they're not that bad. There's issues with them, but they're not that bad. But these ones I started with, they're actually horrible. Luckily, there's enough meat on these things that I can nail them down to what I actually need. But those lines were absolutely horrible. I don't know how I got them so twisted on that saw. Anyways, again with this index and middle, and like I said, I really like this thing. I'm going to go back and see if I can't get some smaller ones and maybe a bigger one. They just work fantastic. Um, so it took a long, long time to actually do all the milling on this, and I think like 75% of this, 80% of this project was actually just rough milling stuff to size. And once it got to size, it cleaned up really nice, and everything at this point is still rough. I'm not doing the final cutting until I'm to that point where I'm ready to do it, and it's not really any end of the world if I'm a couple thousandths under, a couple thousandths over. Um, these aren't all that precision. They're just designed to clamp, and as long as the clamp and function works, they're fine. It's, took files to these things and took the edge off them, sanded them down a bit, starting with, probably 40 grit and work a 60 grit, then 120, 240, and onwards. My idea on these was to polish them, and then I have some solution that will blue them. And the more you polish something, the shinier that blue or the glossier the surface of that blue one will look. And then, I wanted these to really pop up and look great. So I did spend quite a lot of time on the bench getting these things to the point where they're like mirrors. So we put those on the back for the time being, and this is the chasing die on there, and they're going down pretty good. Um, and of course on the On the big ones, on the front ones, there's T handles on there, and the T handles are designed just for a little bit extra torque. And this is just, finishing off one of these screws on it. Just put it in. And one thing I did find, I've been turning my lathe up to about 360 revolutions per minute for parting, and it seems to me to work a lot better than the slower speeds that I used to be running. So I'm just getting a little more comfortable with the lathe, and not as freaked out of cutting a piece off and thinking it's going flying somewhere. So drilling these holes, it basically, I was just, all the 3-inch ones got cut at the same time. All the 5-inch ones got cut at the same time. And for all of them, I was just using the device itself as a measuring tool for them. I'd put these things in, and make sure they're absolutely flush to the one side of the vise, and then drill it and take it out and put the next one in. Once the tops got drilled, and the tops on the big ones had 2 holes in them, then I'd put the bottom piece underneath the top, and the thing would be aligned once again to the end of the vise. The one side would have the hole drilled right through, the other side would have just a part of the hole. The 2 5-inch ones, I didn't drill through on both sides. I had it so the back screw would just push against the bottom part of the vise. And once you had it set to where what you wanted it, then you just tighten the front screw on it, and that would be the tighten mechanism. Whereas the little 3-inch ones, both sides actually got drilled through. Originally, I didn't want to drill them through, but I did make a mistake when I was drilling them, and I put the hole in the back through and the hole in the front only halfway through, and realized that they were backwards from what I needed, so that needed to be changed. And like I said, on these, as long as they're flush to each other, they're good. And at this point right now, I'm just going through this one just to mark the bottom one is where it actually gets drilled. And once they're marked now, I'll reset them and drill them, so that everything lines up in them. And they all did line up really well. And they're all drilled out for, the size of the thread that went in them. And afterwards, when I decided which ones weren't threaded, those ones got drilled out a little extra. And that's still one of the areas that I make my biggest mistakes in, is drilling where it shouldn't be drilled over because it's threaded. So you just seen there that bit actually broke off, and these are DeWalt bits, and surprisingly enough, I got a larger DeWalt bit, turned the piece over, and it drilled right out. So what I'm thinking is when it got to it, it just pushed it through, or pushed it back through. And as you can see there, they threaded out really nice. And my tool there that I made a while back is working great as well. And once these things are all threaded, then it's a matter of starting to get them cleaned up and everything else to get them assembled. So there they are, 3 little ones, and the one in the 5-inch. You can see that doesn't go through in the back where the little ones do. And then there's that one. It's special. It's got some issues going on, and I never have finished it. Uh, but at some point I'm going to. And the problem I had with those fine threads, it actually started to warp the screw, and the screws would not thread, without putting excessive pressure on it. And all of them, I did start, with a cut and die that was quite open, and then afterwards go into a chase and die. But I'm still having some problems with that, with my rods and that, warping out. From here on in, it was just a matter of cleaning them up a bit, and getting them ready to get polished and getting them ready for this tool block. And I've been having issues with this tool block, and I'm thinking, like, why is this stuff not working? This stuff should be working just great. I've done quite a bit of bluing in the past, and it's always worked. And I read the back of this. It says, "Do not use petroleum products." And of course, I'm using acetone to clean the parts. Well, I looked at acetone, and acetone actually is a petroleum product. So it's actually putting on a film on the metal, and the tool block is not able to get through it. Now the next part is I've also polished these things, and I'm looking at my polish, and my polish is also a petroleum part. So these things are absolutely covered with film, and no wonder they were not able to be cleaned. So I took them up into the house, bowl full of soap and water, scrubbed the heck out of them, and as you can see here, the bluing is actually starting to pick up quite well. Um, these do take a little bit to get blued, but you can see later on they absolutely come out beautiful. And it's just a matter of, putting a little bit of work in. And if you leave that on for too long, it'll actually rust the material, and then you got to polish it out with some steel wool. But after they're polished, nice another coat of that solution, and they come out just looking great. Um, they, if you want the really, really high finish, yeah, you're going to have to polish these to the point where they're like chrome, and then clean all the polish off them and any other solutions you got on them. So as I was working on that 5-inch one actually has a little T-bar going through it. And after the T-bar gets made, I actually have to make a little cap. And I had a couple plans here. One was to thread it, and that cap could get threaded on. And the other one was just have that end of that piece, about 2000s, 3000s, oversized from the cap, and press it on. I went with plan B, so you can see on the end there how it tapers down just a little bit. And later on, that's just going to go through the handle and get pressed on. So what I need to do now, though, is actually grab a drill bit and mark it off with some tape as to how deep that end is that I got there, and drill that into another piece of metal, and just run it on a lathe and get it to size, get it to shape, and get it parted off, and then just get them cleaned up. So there's that little piece that I was just talking about. It's got all its chambers on it and everything else, and then the handle goes on the top, and then just ta-da, pressed in. And I don't think I'll ever be taking those apart. But I'm sure, being as pressed in, they will become, they can come apart, but there's absolutely no need to. And it was only the front one on the 5-inch that I did that to. So these small ones, like I said, they're just getting polished. I'm not go blacking them, and being that the polish is petroleum based, it does leave a protective coating on them. But unfortunately, leaving that coating on them means as soon as you touch them, there's fingerprints on them as well. So at some point, they're going to get rectified. But there they are. There's the three small ones that were built, then the 1 5-inch, and you can see the bluing on it on both on the T handle and on the actual bars there. And once again, in the left-hand side of the screen, there's that one that's a little bit special. Um, but as I said, all I got to do is cut a couple of new screws for that, and do the same that I do with the other 5-inch one, and I'll have a set there. Very fun project. Enjoyed doing it, but in hindsight, I'll be ordering material closer to the size I need instead of trying to take it out of a 2 by 2-inch bar for tiny little things like this in the future.